I'm going to tell you about the best job that I've ever had as an autistic person. I'm going to speak about the reasons that this job really worked out for me and why I think that this was such an autism-friendly work environment. And I want to give employers out there an idea as to changes that they can make in their work environments to make more jobs more accessible for neurodivergent employees. Before I get into the video, I will just take a second to introduce myself. My name is Nikki. I am late diagnosed autistic. I was diagnosed at the age of 23, and I make a lot of videos talking about autism and my experience because I'm very passionate about sharing my personal experience and advocating for change in the autism community to create a more inclusive world for autistic people, and also sharing my experience with unmasking and learning how to unmask. I do run a TikTok page with almost 12,000 followers on it currently. So that's the page that I have the most following on and am most active on, but I'm trying to get more active on YouTube and other platforms as well. If you want to go follow me on YouTube or TikTok, that's going to be in the description below. If you like autism content and are interested in learning more about my experience as a late diagnosed autistic person, and you're passionate about autism advocacy, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to my page and also check out my TikTok and other social media platforms as well. So let's get into the video. So for a little bit of context, I left a job that I was getting bullied at in January of 2024. This was getting to a point where it was affecting my mental health, so I finally decided that it was time to leave and look for something that was going to be better for me. I have a video that I recently uploaded about that experience. So if you want to check that out for a little bit of background, go right ahead. So I had reached out to a staffing agency in the Omaha, Nebraska area to help me find another job because like I said, I was getting bullied and it was just not healthy for me at all to be at that job anymore. So I had asked for their help in finding me something that would work for me, and so they ended up placing me. It was a permanent hire position. They placed me into a job where I was going to be auditing insurance premiums. So I'll tell you a little bit about this job and some of the things that I think were really, really helpful and really helped me to be successful in this position. First thing that I'm going to talk about is that this job was hybrid, which was really, really nice. So the way that the schedule was that there was 2 days a week in office, and then the other 3 were work from home. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays were our in-office days. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday were our work from home days. And I really liked that schedule. It was nice that I got to start my week working from home. I didn't have to start Monday commuting to the office, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, I got my office days kind of, done with by the middle of the week. And then Thursday, Friday, I could work in the office or work from home and recover from the office days. And that is really, really nice. A lot of autistic people really struggle to work in office environments, myself included. Like, I have recently found out I just cannot do an office job at least 5 days a week. Like, maybe I can do hybrid, but I have to at least have days at home where I can recover. So I really want to encourage more employers out there to be more open to remote work setups. I can't believe that today there's still all these employers that insist on you coming into the office for a job that can be done completely remotely. Like, I understand jobs that physically cannot be done working from home, but a lot of these jobs can be done remotely, and I don't understand, why we're still making people, commute to an office every single day. I know that I get the whole reason behind, well, we want collaboration. Well, you can collaborate just as well on Microsoft Teams, as you can sitting in an office, and then there's all these employers that like have mandated RTO and things like that, that have been working remotely for the past several years. And now they're making everyone go back into the office. And I'm just, I just want to say to employers, please be more flexible around working from home setups. Not everybody thrives working from the office. And, if you are more open to having a little bit more flexibility, then, it would really, really make some of these jobs more accessible to neurodivergent individuals. A lot of people struggle to work in an office because of, it's the environment can be very overstimulating. There's all sorts of noises going on. There's harsh lighting. There's, all different kinds of smells from when people microwave their lunches and things like that. And that can be very, very overwhelming for someone who is autistic. So allowing someone to work from home would really, really eliminate those sensory issues, because when you work from home, you're in control of your environment. You don't have to deal with smelling everyone's lunches, or, you can have the temperature at whatever you want it to be. And, you're more in control of things like noises. So I think that I think that is one of the reasons that helped me to be successful in this job, was the fact that most of the time I was able to work in an environment where I was comfortable. And even when I did have to work in the office, it really honestly wasn't that bad. The office environment was very quiet for the most part, because the company, pretty much everybody was remote or hybrid. So, our office really wasn't that full, so it really wasn't full, and it wasn't super loud. It was pretty quiet and everyone was focused on their work. So, that's one of the reasons that I could handle the 2 in-office days a week. Working remotely would really solve a lot of these issues. Another thing that I think was really helpful for this job was that the communication. I had just come from a job where I had gotten bullied because I didn't understand common sense. Because my manager would not communicate certain things with me, and she would basically expect me to read her mind. And, this job, clear communication seemed to be the norm, instead of communicating things in a certain way and, having things to where they can be left open for interpretation, having anything that needed to be communicated to the team, the management was they always communicated things very, very clearly. There was never a point where you had to read someone's mind, which, as an autistic person, I can't do that. I really crave clear communication in work environments. I cannot be expected to read someone's mind and to know what that person is thinking without them telling me. So and the other thing is that expectations were always very clear. So this was a premium auditing job. So basically your entire workday was just processing audits, for insurance policies, and that's what you did. You did pretty much the same thing all day long, and so there was expectations that they had on production levels that they wanted you to achieve and things like that. And they made it very clear. And again, as an autistic person, I crave structure like that in a job. I like knowing what is expected of me, and I like to be given the exact information and tools that I need in order to get that done, and then I could do really, really well. So just having an environment where there was a lot of structure and clear communication helped me to be able to be very successful in this job. I was literally one of the best employees on the team, and I think that if I would have been in a different environment, it would have been a different story, and I would have really, really struggled. So, really keeping in mind that some of these things that I'm talking about can really make make a difference and make the difference between someone being able to thrive in a job and someone really, really struggling in a job. Another thing that I'll talk about is just the job itself. The job itself really, really worked for my brain. You know, like I said, I thrive on rules. I thrive on clear black and white directions, you know, and structure. And that's just what that job was. You know, it was, like I said, auditing insurance premiums. And in that job, there's a lot of rules that you have to follow and guidelines that you have to follow. And so that really helped me a lot. You know, that I had clear black and white rules and expectations to follow in the job, instead of being in a situation where things were more ambiguous and I wasn't completely sure what was expected of me. Another thing that I would really like to talk about as well that was a great thing was just the culture, and that the culture in this job was very much like, it was a culture where there was no such thing as a stupid question. You know, like this was my first time doing insurance audits before. Like when you start the job, you go through like a 3-week training process, training class, you know, and of course, especially when you're new to the job, you're going to have a lot of questions and you're not going to know what you're doing, you know, and you're going to have to go to your manager and ask, or go to coworkers and ask. And I liked that, you know, I probably asked my manager a million questions, you know, about different things during my time at this job. And I was never once ridiculed, never once made to feel stupid for asking certain questions. You know, I'm sure I asked questions that to other people might be seen as common sense things that I should know, you know, that I shouldn't even need to ask questions for. And never once did my manager cut me down because I asked a certain question or I didn't understand something. You know, she was never like, oh my God, like what a stupid question. Like, you know, like I said, I had just come from a job where I was getting bullied by my manager because I didn't get common sense. And when I would ask questions, she would yell at me and make me feel stupid. And so this didn't happen. And it created an environment where I felt very safe asking questions, you know, and reaching out to my manager when I needed help with things. And that really helped me to thrive in this job. Not, you know, knowing that I felt safe and that my manager, you know, was there to support me and to help me instead of ridicule me. So I think employers need to do the same thing. All employers, you know, that have this culture where people are not going to be made to feel dumb if they ask a question that to some other people might be common sense. You know, everybody learns differently. Everybody processes things differently. Everyone sees things differently, you know, and so something that you might see as common sense, I might not see that, and vice versa. And so it's important that, you know, we are more understanding and patient around people who, you know, they might not understand something that comes really easy to you. You know, it's always good to just be kind to people and not be judgmental. And this is what happened at that job. Never once did my manager yell at me or make me feel stupid, you know, because I asked a certain question. And, you know, I really, really appreciated that so much. I guess I'll say another thing about the communication at this job. So one thing I really appreciated was that in this job, we would have bi-weekly one-on-ones with our managers. And, you know, although I have some trauma around one-on-ones, at the same time, I appreciated this because it was, you know, I had chances to regularly speak with my manager about my performance and how I was doing, you know, and instead of the only time performance related discussions would take place was during reviews. You know, it was nice because, I mean, again, I didn't have any, you know, significant struggles in this job, but if I did, it would have been nice because I would have had that regular communication and rapport with my manager that she could have helped support me through those things early on before they became a problem. You know, I've had some other jobs where one-on-ones were not a thing. And the only time that you would have a one-on-one with your manager was if something bad was happening, or there was just no communication on work performance and I didn't know what I needed to work on, you know, what I was doing well in or whatever. And like I said, I do really well with good communication and structure and knowing exactly what is expected of me. So I appreciated that as an autistic employee because I knew whether or not I was meeting my employer's expectations or not, instead of having to wonder, am I meeting their expectations, or, you know, yeah. So I think that that's another good thing, is just, you know, have regular communication, regular check-ins with your employees, just to make sure that everything's going good and develop that relationship with them. So yeah, that's another thing that I really liked about this. I think that about wraps up everything that I had to say that was amazing about this job. But yeah, I think that more employers need to be more open to remote work, having clearer communication, and making it just normal. You know, don't ever assume something is common sense, or that someone should already know something without you having to explain it. Like, it's always good to be, you know, to communicate clearly, be too clear, you know, that way there's no confusion anywhere. You know, having a culture where people can ask whatever questions they need to and not feel like they're dumb for doing so, things like that. This is what made this work environment a very safe work environment for me and enabled me to be successful in the position. You know, working for any autistic person is very, very difficult. You know, it's hard for someone to hold a full-time job. I will say, although this job was the most ideal job that I could have had, yeah, you know, I would still experience burnouts and things like that, but this was much more sustainable, you know, much more sustainable than some of the jobs that I was at. So I wanted to make this video to discuss these things and to give employers some ideas on what they should change, what they should be looking for to make sure that their workplace is more neurodivergent friendly. As we know, autistic people have a hard time keeping jobs, and a lot of us can be frequent job hoppers because, you know, something doesn't work for us, we get super burned out. In my case, I've gotten fired from jobs after, you know, a short amount of time. And, you know, this is some of the things that employers need to look at in order to make some of these jobs more accessible. I will say that I am actually no longer with this company, and the only reason that I am no longer with them is because I recently moved to Vegas in March of this year. So I was with this company for a little bit over a year. If I wouldn't have moved away, I would have probably lasted a lot longer. Like, I probably would have easily broken the record of longest that I've been at a job as an autistic person. That record for me is currently 18 months. So, but yeah, I wanted to share that. Like I said, if I would have never moved away, I don't think I would have ever quit that job, because it was the best job that I ever had. Like, the one downside to moving away. But yeah, so yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I have to say about this video. I will be making some more videos. I do want to make a video talking about why I moved to Vegas, just to give a little bit of background on that, because I do want to make another video about the most recent job that I left earlier this summer. So yeah, that was the job that I took when I moved to Vegas, and that job was probably the worst job that I've had. So it really sucked to go from such an amazing job to go to a job that absolutely sucked. But I do want to tell that story because, again, I want to teach employers out there that, you know, things need to change, and more of us would be able to work. But yeah, so I will eventually be sharing that story as well. So like I said, subscribe to this channel if you want to see more uploads, and hear more about my autism journey. And yeah, go check out TikTok and stuff like that. If you could give this video a thumbs up as well if you enjoyed it, that would help me out a ton. I know I'm so awkward because I'm not used to filming YouTube videos. I'm so much better at filming TikTok, but like I said, I'm trying to grow and be a content creator. So yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video.